time as we fly off to another destination with our Diwali passport here on WESN.
Lighting up for Diwali just got simple with the easy-to-use Anand brand wax diyas. They're scientifically engineered to last longer, burn brighter, and keep on lighting. Anand brand wax diyas do not require any prepping or filling and has less spillage and cleanup. These diyas are recommended for outdoor use and can withstand light wind and rain. Plus, they're eco-friendly. Redeem your use cases for cash back. So put some green innovation into your Diwali celebrations with Anand brand wax diyas.
When it comes to Pira and Laddu, I just use Chatak's Laddu and Pira Mithai Mix. It's a combination of traditional ingredients in one pack. I don't spend all that time preparing different ingredients like Ma. 3/4 of the work is done. So now I can make fresh, delicious Pira and Laddu in about 15 minutes with the convenience of Chatak's Laddu and Pira Mithai Mix. Now Ma's Kitchen is a Chatak kitchen. Now available Gulab Jamun Instant Mithai Mix.
Diwali Passport, brought to you by Chatak Food Products and Anand brand wax diyas.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Gunshots outside Southeast Port of Spain Secondary School. Tutor calls for more security. Mother seeks help after special needs child faces bullying at school. Body found in Williamsville identified as drug-related murder victim. And Tobago Carnival expected to attract over 30,000 visitors. Now for the details. Gunshots were heard outside the Southeast Port of Spain Secondary School on the morning of October 17th, leaving students traumatized and forcing an early dismissal. Tutor President Martin Lumpkin expressed concern over the safety of schools in high-risk areas. He also revealed that after an altercation with a security officer, a student reportedly returned with others who attempted to break into the school and threatened further violence. Tutor has urged the Education Ministry to improve security and call on the TTPS to increase patrols around schools in hotspot areas. An 8-year-old boy with special needs attending a private school in Port of Spain has become the target of bullying, according to his mother. She reported that her son, who stutters, has been pinched, kicked, spat on, and verbally abused by classmates. Despite raising concerns, the school has yet to take action. Frustrated, the mother is considering going to the police and Ministry of Education after her son expressed he no longer feels safe at school. She hopes the administration will step in to address the bullying and protect her child. The body of a man found near a cemetery in Williamsville on October 12th has been identified as 49-year-old Adesh Bal of Princestown. An autopsy confirmed Bal was stabbed to death. Police suspect the murder is drug-related as Bal had a history of drug offenses and trafficking. The body was discovered early in the morning by a passerby along Coriel Road. Investigations are ongoing. The Tobago House of Assembly's Division of Tourism expects over 30,000 visitors for the island's 3rd annual carnival from October 25th to 27th. Assistant Secretary Niall George shared the projection on the Tobago Updates morning show, highlighting the event's significant economic impact, estimating at least $30 million in spending. George noted the carnival is off to a strong start with the Runaway Beach Party at Pigeon Point on October 16th, drawing large crowds. He emphasized that this signals a promising carnival season for Tobago. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for watching.
Come travel with us as we explore Diwali across the globe. Diwali is celebrated in many countries worldwide, but do you know the traditions and practices of each nation? From Guyana to Australia, WESN presents Diwali Passport.
October 9th to October 30th, with replays on October 31st.
It's Diwali Passport, a WESN exclusive.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. I mean, and Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
Dare I say, all of the bacchanal and the bubble and the nonsense and the inefficient waste of time that leads to incredible wastage has me feeling upset. And no, I don't mean like emotionally upset. I mean physically upset. Apologies for the late start this morning. I did not wake up 100% my best self, but the show will go on. And I do think to some extent, at what point will we now start to look at the current situation of the country and realize that it potentially will exacerbate risk factors for people with NCDs? I mean, we have an issue with NIB and pension rights. Well, it's a hell of a strategy to just allow the country to descend so far down that the stress will deal with a certain section of the population. Because that's what I fear is going to happen. The stress is going to get so high that we're going to see people drop down dead. Some of them old, some of them young. You can never tell who has a cardiovascular disease at a young age. Could be genetics, could be long COVID. Who knows these days? But the stress of it all. You might know somebody who was murdered. You might know somebody who was murdered in your neighborhood. You might know somebody who was taken for a ride with public health. You might know somebody who died in a public hospital where the treatment, particularly the bureaucracy and the management of their care, leaves more questions than answers, leaves a lot to be desired, and a lack of transparency doesn't help that, does it? Just remember, we've had all of these problems over the last couple of years. And the question is, why does it seem as though we never really get a solution to our problems? Think about it. Think about all the things that you heard in the news that was bad for the last 2 to 3 years. Where are the solutions for any of them, really? There's very few things that seemingly are being improved slowly but surely due to steady work. Those things are few and far between. It's not education, it's not national security, it's not food security, it's not ease of doing business, it's not public health. So what are we going to do about it? I mean, case in point. Minister of Energy was told he had to apologize to Parliament now. All right, cool. The one minor silver lining in this is that the Speaker of the House did not just admonish him, but admonished any of his colleagues that encouraged the behavior. And she did give mention to one member in particular who tried apparently to push back a little bit on the dotishness. And then the Speaker left, the Deputy Speaker heard the apology and decided that no further punishment would be required because he withdrew the statements and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. I wonder if the recording will be withdrawn. I wonder what does that mean for the Hansard. There's a part of me that thinks on some level, what practical gain would there be for him to be severely punished? Like, how far could they actually punish him that it would practically matter? I don't know. But there's another part of me that thinks, is this really a solution? Does this really prevent something like this happening again? I don't really think so. It might prevent the individual from doing it again, maybe. But given, we ain't even talking slap on your wrist. We just talking disappointed stare. That's the best we got. That's the standards we have. I'll give you a hint. A disappointing stare is not going to deal with the school violence and discipline problems we have with our young people who themselves, as we spoke to Inspector Calendar yesterday, most likely are going through some hard times that authorities might not be aware of and are lashing out because they themselves are suffering. But I guess the standard of the day is a disappointing stare and a reprimand, a verbal reprimand. And then we will withdraw it from the record, apparently. We'll wash our hands of it and pretend it never happened. Think about it. That's kind of the stereotypical plot point in any sort of movie or book or TV show when the son of a rich family does something he was not supposed to do, and instead of actually feeling the full repercussions of the rules and regulations, you know, his parents talk to the administration and they say, well, he'll get an official reprimand, but then we'll wipe his record clean. Because he has a promising future, and we don't want this one thing to tarnish that. That's fine, you know, if that's the standard across the board, let that be the standard across the board. Somehow I don't feel that's the standard for young men and women. And once again, it seems as though politicians who are supposed to be experts in messaging, in communication, not just in what they say, but what they do, and how they do it, and how they say it, the signals that are sent to indicate their position. It's almost like if subtlety is a lost art on this breed of politicians, number one. And number two, it might seem as though any sort of complex thought with regards to communication might actually just be a bit beyond them. Which is interesting to note, given that some of them are both very intelligent and have great political experience, and yet they could bungle their obvious agenda in certain instances where they attempt to interfere with independent bodies. And it didn't happen once, it happened at least twice, very publicly. Could be happening 3 times with the procurement legislation, but we don't necessarily have an incident to point to. So I'll just leave that there. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why they think this is sufficient. I get it. It's not like I want to see children go to jail for 10 days. Right? But something. Anything. We have a crime problem, and this is the signal you're sending. Maybe I'm wrong, and a caller will say, what do you expect them to do? Listen, I don't necessarily like the idea of scapegoating, but you know, sometimes the best scapegoats are the times when you scapegoat yourself. One of the things with sports coaches is they don't always cuss and carry on to the people that need to be cussed and carried on. They do so to the good players who listen to everything, who have the discipline and have the mental fortitude to take it. So indirectly, the messages goes to the others. And I'm not necessarily saying that Stuart Young is good or bad. But what I'm saying is, punishing him in this situation was not about punishing him. It was about sending a message that, hey, we take proper conduct, civil discourse, respect for each other seriously, because that is the minimum baseline before we get to law breaking and corruption and murder. If we don't have those basic human traits, those basic human principles, if we can't even live up to that, how are we supposed to then somehow as a society stop killing each other? just because you say so, with a wish and a hope and a dream, because you have no actual plans to try to treat with the situation. All right, I don't want to harp on this too long. There's a lot to get through to close out the week. So, of course, as always, we will kick off today's Daily Review. All right, quick story. Foster Cummings, the General Secretary, he apparently communicated to the press. There will be an announcement made after Saturday when there will be the PNM General Council. So it's interesting that they're making this announcement after they said, well, no, things are not delayed, they're cancelled. But then, depending on what they say at the General Council and what comes out of that, if we get anything from that, for all intents and purposes, effectively, things might have just been delayed. I don't understand. It makes me wonder, they probably have not decided themselves exactly what they want to do, which would be interesting if that is the case. Maybe it's not. But I will wait and see. Maybe they realize that a lack of information is not really helping their position. I would argue that is the case. Therefore, trying to come up with a clear course of action that they could present to the public would be a good idea sooner rather than later. Because the last thing that they could afford to do is to not just have to deal with the fact that they're the incumbents, so crime is mostly on them, the economy is mostly on them, governance and all the issues and potential corruption and the interference of independent bodies, etc., 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 is mostly on them. Foreign exchange situation is mostly on them, because this is, we need 10 years now, 10 years, almost. The last thing they need is to also join in with the opposition to have the perception by the public that things are not in order inside, because things ain't in order outside. And a lot of what the PNM strength is how we are stable. Our organization is top-notch. We are better organized than the opposition. We have our act together when it comes to elections, when it comes to our internal body, when it comes to how we do business. We have our act together. That was essentially a significant chunk of their selling point that they wanted to give us on the local government election campaign trail in the opening of Balize House. That's one of the few positives. They linked themselves to the prime ministers of yesteryear and their heritage and history and tradition of governance. So the last thing, it might look even worse given their deep history if their internal situation looks just as bad, if not worse, than the UNC, with all of this tradition and institutional knowledge behind it. So before things get out into the public, let's try and see how we control the narrative. All right, fine. Come good after Saturday, please. Otherwise, don't be upset if the public and members of the media, some members, try to read the tea leaves and put forward multiple hypotheses and possibilities, and some of those possibilities ain't gonna have you looking good. Not that all will, but, you know, the public tends to latch on more to the negative than the positive, to the point where they'll tell the people trying to play devil's advocate and be balanced, why are you defending them for? So, but hey, it won't be all negative, but I can't control what the public decides to take and run with. All right, next story. This one is, I don't know whether to laugh or cry, applaud, or just be disgruntled. Now, on the surface, out of context, I do think this might work. It's just how it was framed I can't agree with. Apparently, and now I don't know if this is the actual policy that has the lines were blurred or if this is new policy, but police officers will have to turn in their tactical uniforms if they are not part of one of 4 units. That is the Guard and Emergency Branch, the Interagency Task Force, National Operating Task Force, and the Multi-Operational Police Section. Now, I don't necessarily know why we have so many task force. The interagency one makes sense that they work with the Army. Guard and Emergencies, Guard and Emergency. I don't know what the others do, to be honest, but hey, whatever. They were allowed to wear tactical uniforms. Other police officers All other officers assigned to division branches, sections, and units, including members of the Divisional Task Force, must be appropriately attired in Patrol Order Number 3, gray and blue uniforms. And this is because there are too many reports of police tactical wear being worn by individuals committing a crime, committing a violent crime. So, to some extent, yes, you kind of have to hit the reset button on uniforms, fine, right? This is one way to do it. Hopefully, you call in all of the extraneous usage, you rein it in, and now it's easier to control and hopefully easier to track, and things won't slip through the fingers. Of course, there's still the issue of fake uniforms, counterfeit uniforms will still potentially be out there. So this measure does not solve that one bit, because really and truly, how many civilians in heat of the moment with police come into your car or come into your house with heavy firepower saying you're arrested, we come to search your house or something like that? You're going to know how to differentiate the uniforms if it's fake or not fake. So we have that issue. But then the second thing about this is the fact that it has been framed by DCP Benjamin that this is the Commissioner of Police showing decisive leadership. I'm sorry. There have been issues with uniforms before this week. Right? Decisive leadership is not someone who closes the door after the horse has bolted out the stable. Decisive leadership is not someone who tries to look for solutions to a problem that we have already had to suffer. Now, if the problem couldn't have been anticipated, fine. But I'm very certain that before her term in office, this was an issue. It just didn't get the attention, maybe didn't have enough incidents to get it the attention that it probably deserved from the jump. So to say that now this is a decisive step, because to be honest, again, this is so decisive, but it only deals with missing uniforms or misappropriated uniforms. It doesn't deal with fake uniforms. And I'll leave that there. All right, last story I'll just hit very, very quick. The Minister of Works and Transport was defending the situation with flooding in the country. Cool, right? And then he wanted to reference the fact that, hey, look, there's even flooding in the Sahara. And all I'll say to him is this: listen, that's just an example of people who did not prepare for the rainfall. The only difference is, in the Sahara, they didn't have warning. There was no reasonable expectation for excessive rains or rains more than normal to be hitting them in the Sahara. But in TNT, we kind of know that this flooding thing is going to go on, I don't know, for the last few years now. It's almost a given. What? God sneeze on Port of Spain? Flood. That's all it takes. Not even a big sneeze. Just a little chew. Flood. After a few minutes, certain areas of the country, doesn't take much rain, doesn't even have to be that heavy, flood. The Sahara now floods out. Oh, that's the excuse? Nah. Nah. That kind of thinking is a little bit too oversimplistic for my tastes, and it shows me that you want to get more of an excuse for your inability to deal with the problem, as opposed to having a legitimate discourse on finding solutions to the problem. That's what that tells me. And it's not the first time that's happened, yes, and it won't be the last. But I don't want to hear about oh, the Sahara had record rains and it flooded. Yeah. They could not anticipate that. That's point number one. Two, it's desert. Nobody lives on that lake. There's no houses being destroyed. People aren't losing their livelihoods there. They are here, where we can anticipate the water. If you wanted to draw parallel, maybe you could have actually done some research, looked into other areas where there's urbanization, maybe in a first world country that has regular flooding due to heavy rains. That could have been a better example to try to shield your bacon. But no, you don't actually do research. That's why when you took over the ministry, you wasn't even aware what was going on with the ferry service until it broke down And then you were all, I'm confused, how did it break down all of a sudden? Meanwhile, half of Tobago knew that the ferries were breaking down for years. But hey, the ferry service is only a very, very, very minor, insignificant line item in his ministry, right? It's only what, a couple $100 to operate in maintenance or something like that? We ain't talking millions of dollars in expenditure here. No. So why would he need to be aware of what's going on? And with that said, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome a familiar face. Stay tuned to talk about the WSN. We'll be right back after this.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust. Prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
So folks, like I said, all the bubble and bacchanal has me feeling upset. Not emotionally, no, my stomach is quite upset with all of the nonsense going on in the running of the country. So I had to call in some reinforcements, and who better than the one and only, the man who, well, I don't know if he's upset as I am, but you know, we'll see how that goes. Mr. Keaton Shah.
Good morning, Sean Michael Small. I don't have to ask how you're feeling today. I've gotten a bit of introduction, and I would just say that I hope you recover very soon, but it is to my benefit that I'm not in studio with you if you have an upset stomach.
Yes, that's all right. So there's a lot of bubbles to get into, some that I've spoken about already, some that I have not, but obviously the most burning ones, let's just start with the saga that is Stuart Young and his hot mic episode?
Well, in respect to Stuart Young and his hot mic episode, as you put it, I bear in mind that this is a gentleman who was just awarded senior counsel status by his own colleagues. And though we've made an argument that it seems as though there's that whole process is skewed, he still has the title of senior counsel. Furthermore, we have found an excuse by saying, and the excuses that I've heard from those who have defended Mr. Stuart Young is that this is a political peacock. If we can't come up with excuses or try to defend it as simply being political peacock.
Wait, Keaton, I just want to clarify something. Now, I know that there's political peacock, but wouldn't you agree with me that this is very hard to justify as just merely being political peacock?
Correct. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
You cannot find any reason or excuse to suggest that this is political peacock because, you know, Mr. Young did not realize, according to what he was saying, that the microphone was on. And now I'm even more curious to know what is said in Parliament as crosstalk. You know, I'm curious to know what is actually said when the microphone is off. But even listening to his apology, well, not listening, I listened to his apology yesterday, but his apology, of which he first issued via social media, I think Mr. Young was forced into a position where he had no choice to apologize. It took quite some time for him to come out and make an apology, which I think was very unfortunate on his part. It just shows that there was very, in my opinion, the impression that I would get is that there was very little remorse to his comment. But with that said, he nevertheless issued an apology via social media, and he said that the incident has served as an unnecessary distraction from pressing issues facing the country. He is absolutely correct in saying that, but it's a distraction created by his own. This is entirely his own fault, by his own creation. Honestly, Sean Michael Smalley, he has really lived up to the term lower house. He has brought the house down as far as I'm concerned. And we cannot find any excuses for this, saying that it's political peacock. I think it's quite unfortunate. And I'm also now wondering, what is the point of having a parliamentary privileges committee?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is the point of having a parliamentary privileges committee? Now, bearing in mind, the opposition themselves have a history of making some very, very despicable, insultive commentary, whether it be in Parliament or outside. They have a history of doing that as well, even the opposition leader. But the Prime Minister himself has found himself in hot water many of times, of which he has not apologized for. And it's a shame that this is where our politics have gotten. I don't know what's the point of a parliamentary privileges committee if these things are not sent before them. I am not so sure of what Mr. Stuart Young's record is. He said he hopes his record speaks for himself. What record are you referring to exactly? You know, the record of you getting senior counsel status for what? Your record as energy minister for what exactly? An unnecessary distraction created by your own point. We heard him cursing. Again, regardless of whether or not the microphone was on or off, there is no excuse. Furthermore, it is unfortunate that the Speaker of the House did not act sooner. But again, it just goes to show that there was very little remorse. Saying that he has shown remorse, I don't think is quite accurate. I would have expected an apology sooner. I would have expected the Speaker of the House to act sooner. Nevertheless, one would make the argument that it's done and dusted, it's over and done with. But no, well, I don't think we can just simply brush this off, or any behavior or misbehavior, disrespectful, insultive, on the part of any member of Parliament.
Well, I have two questions for you. The first one, you know, it seems as though the situation was forced because the press confronted him, he didn't comment on it. And then after there was enough negative sentiment expressed in the public, he apologized. Then the Speaker did what she did. Then he apologized again. It seems to me that he's not really remorseful for the act. Again, it distracted national discourse. It seems more like he's responsible that he was caught.
He was more remorseful for the microphone being on. Because again, even the language afterwards when his own colleagues tried to admonish him, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, it is the Minister of Health, Terence Dialsing, tried to, and in response, Minister Stuart Young said, hey, don't call my name.
Yeah, with an expletive.
Again, you heard an expletive on his part. Sean, put it this way. Ministers are quick to stand up against any sort of incidents that happen in the public. For example, recently with bullying, we have condemned parents and we have condemned students for their misbehavior, right? We have had strong language for individuals out there who are doing wrong. And quite rightly so, I agree with that. But then, in the same way that you're quick to correct citizens, in the same way that you're quick to point out the wrongdoings, the misbehaviors of members of the public or even students, what examples are you setting? It is frustrating to me, the excuses that I keep hearing. Political peacock or the microphone was on and he did not realize. But I appreciate the fact that the microphone was on, because it goes to show that more often than not, in my opinion, that this probably happens. This probably happens quite often in Parliament. It's just very, very unfortunate to say the least, at the very least. But again, what is the point of a parliamentary privilege committee? What example is being set? This situation is very unbecoming.
Hold that thought, because I want to tie it into, you have a different take with regards to the Minister of National Security, that I think, than I did, or at least partially different. So I want to get into that, because then I think it ties into the second question I had, which it ties into what you just said there. So the Minister of National Security, he had some very interesting things to say. My take ultimately was, listen, it's true, but it should not come from you, because you being in charge of the national security side of things, it could potentially come off as an excuse for you not living up to your side of the bargain, or the people under you not living up to their side of the bargain. It's different if you and I said society, or a political scientist, or a criminologist, or a social scientist, or an economist said society, right? But for the people in national security to then say, well, the problem is society, I didn't like that. But perhaps you might have a slightly different take.
If you're referring to the article with the headlines, Hines blames citizens as murders cross 500, I read the article. I looked at the headline and I was in shock when I first saw the headline. And then I read the article, and in my opinion, I think the headline was quite misleading to what was stated on the part of the Minister of National Security. Now, people might not like to hear that, and I'm sometimes the last person to defend the words and the actions of the Minister of National Security. But I thought in this particular instance, the article, the headline, did not reflect the body of the article and what the minister really said. It was quite misleading. Having read it further, the minister, do you think the minister was wrong in what he was saying by suggesting that we all have a role to play in dealing with crime, but there is a certain level of responsibility as well, in which society has produced and nurtured children that are, perpetrating violence? Crime is hit 500. You'll argue that yes, his comments are ill-timed. You can make that argument. It's ill-timed, and his comments were unnecessary. But he is not necessarily wrong. To a certain extent, we have seen the behavior by citizens when police are conducting operations. We have seen the behavior of citizens towards police officers. I've experienced the kind of language and crude and crass behavior displayed out there. I'm hearing stories of what is taking place within the school system. A parent, according to one of the latest stories, came to a school and actually threatened the principal. The principal, the principal reprimanded a student or students for their behavior. And the parent came to school and threatened the principal. This is what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago. We can't deny or doubt that. So the minister, to a certain degree, has a point, and a point that I could agree with. The article's headlines was very unfortunate. He is right to say that no gang can operate in any community without the knowledge or the acquaintances of members of that society. He is absolutely correct. At the end of the day, I think the minister, however, really needs to focus on ensuring that the national security apparatus, of which he is responsible for, is fully resourced, is operating to capacity, and operating efficiently. That is what his focus needs to be upon. But at the end of the day, you can't fault him for that comment. I don't think I think it was ill-timed and probably misinterpreted. But as you said, I have a different interpretation to what he said.
Because the thing is, like I said, he's not wrong, but there's a difference with it coming from him, right? Especially at a time where we just had a young man killed because reportedly he did not want to choose a side in the gang conflict. He didn't want to choose a gang to belong to. And that's not the first time we've seen reports like that, where they try to keep people out of the gangs, right? Where young men try to find a different path for themselves than to join that life. So for him to say that, to some extent, yes, there are people who are culpable. Don't get me wrong. But to some extent, first of all, he should have acknowledged the fact that to push against the gangs as just normal citizens in a community, it's not that simple. And in some cases, the consequences are very dire. So that's point number one. I don't think he could have given that message, but if he was a bit more careful, it would have been more effective. One of the things is, again, the messaging side of it, what he said coming from him, there are people, and I get it, after listening to you, I myself am thinking maybe I was too harsh on him, but then I also have to acknowledge the fact that there will be people who will be more harsh than I am, and there will be almost nothing you could tell them to not be very critical in their interpretation of his words. The other thing is the fact, going back to the Stuart Young incident, look at what happened. We essentially had, I said it earlier today, we didn't even have a slap on the wrist per se. We had a disgruntled stare, a disappointed stare by the authority figure, and then apparently we wiped the records of the incident, or it's withdrawn. I don't know if that wipes the Hansard record of the statement, but it's withdrawn apparently. And that's it. How does society supposed to interpret these things? By the way, politicians also come from the same society that allow criminal activity to happen. That's the other implication that he did not necessarily head off the path. But what does it say that here we have the minister saying, do what I say, not what I do, because what we did in Parliament had nothing to do with accountability?
As I said, going back to Stuart Young, what example is he setting for these children, the same children and parenting of which the Minister of National Security has noted in its response to the question posed by the media house? But that being said as well, Sean, you're not harsh or too harsh on the Minister of National Security. I myself am very much frustrated, and I've been very expressive many a times before on Talking Points about this situation. But that being said, I give you the example, I think it was late last week or earlier this week, when I spoke about the fact that people do not trust the police service anymore. Mm-hmm. I understand. And even me as an individual who has advocated for us to respect laws and to respect the TTPS who are charged with enforcing laws, I myself find it in a position of frustration. But at the same time, it's quite, I could understand why people find it very difficult to digest what the Minister of National Security is saying. You made a comment just now. Politicians come from the very same society of which criminals are emanating from. I think politicians tend to forget that they are citizens, Trinbagonian citizens as well, when they are elevated to the lower house and even to the upper house. Take, for example, Fitzgerald Hines' comments last week during the budget debate when he spoke about how a criminal got in contact with him. Mm-hmm. The Minister of National Security actually reported that this is a criminal. Apparently, it's a criminal, according to further statements, it's a criminal who is actually currently housed at the prison, whatever prison that may be. it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they still got in contact with the Minister of National Security, right? But I could understand why people will be frustrated and upset. Believe you me, I am as well. I just think that I just think the headline was misleading.
There's another part of the article, and this could be the article taking advantage of a situation that was not meant to be put together. But then again, that would just be an indicator of very bad timing. Ansel Dennis, now Senator Ansel Dennis, Tobago Council leader, he put the blame of crime on Tobago on the THA, saying they didn't do enough to generate jobs and opportunities for young people. And I'm like, Tobago is not that different from Trinidad to say that some of the economic problems that Tobago has are not similar to the economic situations of Trinidad. So I find it interesting that here we have another PNM person saying, yeah, but in Tobago's case, it's the politicians. You see, in Trinidad's case, it's society, but in Tobago's case, it's the politicians. That was the implications, I think, of putting those two things together. It might not be fair, to your point, but the timing of those comments probably was not good to try to send that mixed signal together.
Sean Michael Small, when it comes to politics, understand, when you're in opposition, your responsibility is simply to criticize. That is what it has become. When you're in opposition, you have the world of things to say. Again, I point out the last time the People's National Movement was in opposition, between 2010 and 2015, they were excellent. They were very, very good in opposition. However, all that they said, all that they brought forward, all that they put to the public of Trinidad, all that was highlighted in Parliament, have they actually done different or done anything better? It's the same Prime Minister who made an argument that if a government has now deflected their responsibilities in respect to crime, then they themselves are part of the problem. And yet this is the same Prime Minister who is refusing to take any sort of responsibility. And to a certain extent, it's the Minister of National Security who has said a crime plan is not his responsibility. Let's be real. Again, I understand the frustrations of citizens. And when you are in opposition, you can say anything you want to say and get away with it. And the thing is, that is why I hope Trinbagonians listen very carefully and they don't forget. Ansel Dennis's comments, it would be interesting to know all this thing about creating jobs, about responsibility on the part of the THA. I'm curious to know, what are his suggestions? What are the alternatives being put forward? We see what is happening in Ghana, and I'm just using this as an example because Ghana has its own problems and its own situations to deal with. But you saw the opposition party coming out and saying, these are the alternatives, these are the options that we would recommend, these are what we are suggesting. They might not agree with it, but the mere fact is they've come out and done that. Mm-hmm. Why am I not hearing that on the part of Ansel Dennis and Kelvin Morris? Those are two individuals whom, by the way, I've interviewed many a times, and I enjoy interviewing them. You know that they, more often than not, they actually agree to come on. And when you're in opposition, right, it's supposedly easier to get an interview.
I can tell you why. Because the budget is controlled by central government and cabinet. The most of the developmental dollars spent in Tobago is controlled by central government and cabinet. That's basically why. That's basically why.
They
know better.
Of no good to say, but I never get any alternatives or options, and that is what frustrates me.
I mean, you also did not get anything viable from one member of the opposition at least once on AM Prime. I remember you talking about an interview.
Oh yes, I'll never forget that interview where a comment was made about 70 billion is enough to run Trinidad and Tobago. You bring them on the program, please defend your comments. And it was a load of.
Keaton, do you suspect that individual never heard of the concept of inflation? I'm just,
No, I
because it seems as though he's thinking, well, 70 billion in 2012 would have been sufficient, but it's not 2012. This is 2024.
Again, I think you need to. I think again, when you're in opposition, whether it be in the particular case of the People's National Movement in Tobago as part of the THA, whether it's and it doesn't just go for parties who have formed the main opposition. It goes for parties who are also the opposition as well. I take a look at the Innovative Democratic Alliance, and I've interviewed them, and I will tell you, those interviews frustrate me. It's the same thing here. Again, I will always welcome them onto the program, but again, if you are putting these things out there, I want something concrete. I don't just want your commentary, oh, it's all bad, it's all no good, it's terrible and whatnot. It's government is failing this and that. All right, cool, we know that. You don't have to come on every time and say it. It's the same commentary that I get from the opposition sometimes. I want concrete ideas. I want plans. I want alternatives.
To be fair to the TPP, when they were campaigning as the PDP, would you say that, at least to some extent, they were willing to speak about policy more than any other political entity not in majority government at the time? Because it's not as though they had a whole set of ideas to cover everything in great detail that was 100% accurate. But they had ideas, and they did share the ideas with us. We might not agree with all the ideas, but they were willing to talk about ideas.
They shared ideas, but not necessarily policy. Policy doesn't equate to ideas, so understand that. So again, the TPP has faults of its own as well. I'm still trying to figure out, is the TPP the reincarnation of the PDP? But again, that's a topic for a different time.
I want to sneak this one in before we run out of time. Because you said, well, the opposition can say whatever they want. I would argue the cabinet seemingly thinks they can say whatever they want too. Because, why don't blame us for flooding here? There's flooding in the Sahara. And in my mind, I'm like, well, that's just because no one was prepared for the flooding, right? They didn't do their due diligence. They didn't anticipate the flooding. That's a them problem. Except, one, it's abnormal weather. Not like abnormal weather for the last 5 years. We're talking abnormal weather now for now. And two, let me borrow a phrase from his cabinet colleague. For the most part, in the Sahara, nobody lives there. Who's having their homes flooded out when the Sahara floods out?
For the most part of the Sahara.
For the most part, right?
There are people living in the Sahara.
I know there are people living there, but I mean, look, have you seen one photo of a house in the Sahara being flooded out? One.
Sean, Rohanson, an individual whose comments many a times, I use it for entertainment. I can't help but laugh many a times because you wonder, what is this individual really thinking? This is not the first time that he has said flooding is not a Trinidad and Tobago problem. He's absolutely correct. Flooding is not a Trinidad and Tobago problem. But is he the minister of everywhere else as well as Trinidad and Tobago? No. His priority and his focus needs to be Trinidad and Tobago. To come to Parliament and say even the Sahara is flooding, which is an extraordinary event, it's a phenomenal event, right? Which also goes to show the impact of global warming and climate change. Understand that, sure, weather patterns are becoming more and more unpredictable. I understand that, I get that. But fortunately in Trinidad, we still have an idea of when we have a wet season and when we have a dry season, right? It's becoming more and more difficult to predict when it's going to rain in that wet season, but at the end of the day, we still have an idea. So I don't know. This is the thing. The minister has defended flood mitigation measures. What are those flood mitigation measures? Us clearing out the existing drainage infrastructure, ensuring that the pumps are that can't be.
Keaton, I know there's another word for that. It's called maintenance.
No, you see, Sean, you will argue maintenance is a mitigation measure. Maintenance is a mitigation measure. But every year we can't keep saying this is the same thing. As far as I'm aware, and please, call us, correct me if I'm wrong. There's been no efforts in respect to proper or serious drainage or a drainage plan. I believe that the minister highlighted, I think 2 years ago, I think it was in 2022, it could have been last year, that there was a flood plan that was being put forward and was actually being developed courtesy funding from CAF, the Latin American Development Bank. Where is that plan? What is going on with that plan in particular? Where are we with that? So to come and defend your efforts for every year we are constantly clearing up and these passageways, yes, that's all well and good. That is your responsibility. That is your very basic and respected responsibility to ensuring that TNT doesn't flood. Where are your drainage plans? Where are the efforts to examine the existing drainage infrastructure and to upgrade or update our infrastructure? A simple little thing like mangrove. I think recently, with respect to Hurricane Milton in Florida, we saw videos of just how effective mangrove can be when it comes to helping the situation with erosion and with flooding. We've cleared out mangrove. Look at by the foreshore. That mangrove has been cleared out. The mangrove there's still some that exist, but that has been cleared out
without appropriate drainage being built in to the project.
What is going on there? Those are things that you have to wonder, where is the long-term planning or the long-term development or the long-term thinking?
Well,
so Sean, you're absolutely correct. You go from both sides. The opposition can say what they want and get away with it, but also it seems ministers are saying what they want and getting away with it. And as far as I'm concerned, this thing with Stuart Young, I'm bringing back the point with Stuart Young once more. I don't think there was any remorse. He was forced to make an apology. He waited quite some time to issue an apology, and then he issued it via social media. The first place he should have apologized was to the Honorable Parliament, was to the House. That was the very first thing. He refrained from apologizing to any members of the opposition. He said it was an unnecessary distraction, but it's an unnecessary distraction created by his own hand. And again, what is the point of a Parliamentary Privileges Committee? This is a senior council. What example is he setting? The same Minister of Education who keeps speaking about parents, the same Minister of Education who keeps speaking about the state of our schools in respect to students and their reactions, the fighting, the bullying, hearing about gangs. What example is being set? It's no excuse whatsoever. And please, miss me with this nonsense if you say it's political peacock or the mic should have been off.
The thing is,
that is ridiculous. That's a poor excuse.
I said yesterday, he's being forced at this point. I don't care about his apology personally. Like, as a forced apology, what good is it, right? But back to the Minister of Works and Transport. My thing is this, Keaton. Let's take it down to the micro level. He's doing a presentation, and I wonder how much research goes into the things that he says, because the Sahara is not an apples-to-apples comparison with regards to our situation, in part because we're not talking about flooding this year. We're talking about flooding for the last several years, right, where it seems like any little drizzle of rain could flood. If they actually did research into changing weather patterns and what other countries were doing to try to mitigate it, he could just look to the UK. They have a serious flooding problem, right? What are they doing about it? What are the challenges they face? If he wants to try to find some sort of comparison to make himself look better, that at least would be something a bit more in line than the Sahara.
Sean, let me quote in verbatim now the Minister of Works and Transport. And I have the quote right here, so permit me to read it. He says, yes, there have been challenges with flooding, but we have to take that into context of what is happening internationally. If you're taking it internationally, it's completely out of context for Trinidad and Tobago now, right? Because in Trinidad and Tobago so far, we have been doing well. Well, we've probably been doing well because we have not had significant rainfall as is expected with our wet season. But I will tell you, after 15 minutes of heavy rain, there are parts of Trinidad and Tobago that is underwater. So again, put it into context, Minister. How have we been doing well? What do you see us as Trinidad and Tobago doing well when it comes to flooding, especially after 15 minutes of rain? He goes on to say, there is no guarantee we will get away from what is happening. We have not gotten away from what is happening.
But then based on what you mean there's no guarantee? Keaton, based on what he said, shouldn't that mean that just maintenance of our waterways is not enough? Because he's basically implying climate change is making the weather patterns get worse. The risk of flooding is increasing. Meanwhile, we're doing the same old. Appreciate it. Don't be grateful that we are not doing anything new.
I think that, put it this way, if I am to be fair and if I am to be just, I will tell you that a major part of the problem in Trinidad and Tobago is the mere fact that citizens, to a great extent, don't necessarily care about the environment. Because, you know, I'm going to be fair here. I have criticized the minister for his comments, and now let me criticize us as citizens. We simply have no care in the world when it comes to disposal of garbage or rubbish. Simple little things like cigarette packets, cigarette papers, they add up, they build up. I remember witnessing once a gentleman who I assumed to be a pensioner, you know, drank a bottle of soft drink and then threw the bottle right there on the ground, just drank it and then threw it right there and then walked away. And I couldn't believe it. But then and again, how many people across TNT does that? Obviously, that is contributing significantly to the problem as well. And then beyond that, you have development in low-lying areas with improper infrastructure. And I'm wondering where these individuals are getting approval for such. You know, does that come down to local government as well? Does that come back to town and country planning? So you see, the thing is, Sean Michael Small, yes, those are considerations that one has to bear in mind when we are speaking about flooding in Trinidad and Tobago. But the minister, unfortunately, I don't think he has very much of a defense, even if you want to raise the fact that the Sahara desert is flooding. I wonder how long it took for that water to disappear, because obviously there's quite a lot of heat in the desert compared to Trinidad and Tobago.
Yep.
And just beyond that, bear in mind, it has no drainage as such in the Sahara Desert. But that's probably where the minister was comparing Trinidad and Tobago to the Sahara Desert, the lack of drainage infrastructure. That's quite probably, you know, his defense in respect to his commentary.
Well, the other thing is the Sahara doesn't have a minister of works and transport. We do. I'll just say it. And with regards to the environment, here's the catch. There's a correlation between economic prosperity and consideration to the environment. And given that too many of our citizens now are suffering from economic borderline poverty, if not poverty, they're on the margins, it's hard then to really get an environmental conscious message to hit home with them, because they're stressed out by trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent, how they're going to pay property tax, how they're going to buy groceries, and et cetera, et cetera. So I understand that it's a bad thing for the population to not be conscious about just keeping the environment clean, right? Basic things you're talking about there that there isn't much excuse over. But
Sean, I think honestly speaking, you just spoke about poverty and this and that. And yes, people in TNT are struggling. I will say I did go yesterday to the supermarkets, and you know, when I estimated that my bill was going to be about $600, it was over 1,000. And I said, clearly I'm not too good at mathematics at all, but it's the items I had in my cart that I was looking at. It was the prices I was looking at. I said, okay, great. It's ridiculous what's going on. I mean, it's probably my mathematics, but it was quite a shock. My jaw dropped. So of course people are suffering. Of course people are struggling. It is tragic to see the very least of where we are now as a nation compared to where we were. But again, it shows there was no long-term planning or no long-term consideration. Unfortunately, I also think that ministers cannot relate to average Trinbagonians. Because at the end of the day, they have a role, they have a responsibility. Their job is not necessarily easy, but they have not made it easier for themselves either. And Sean, with the remuneration that they get, and for being able to say the things that they say, or do the things that they do and get away with it, they can't survive in the private sector. That sort of attitude, that sort of behavior, their actions, they can't get away with that in private sector. I think they tend to forget a lot when they reach into the what is supposed to be the honourable halls of Parliament. They can't relate to us. They can't understand what the average Trinbagonian is going through. Because at the end of the day, for them, it's a matter of statistics. It's a matter of what is taking place. So if the Minister of Finance, for example, is saying we've had 3 years of consecutive growth, we've had $5.5 billion of our foreign reserves available. All these things you're pushing forward. But again, I ask, put it into context. Put it into context. If the Minister of Works and Transport wants to put it into context with respect to the Sahara Desert or what is taking place internationally, focus on what is going on in Trinidad and Tobago, and I don't know, stop living in a world of your own.
Keaton, we are in the first month of the new budget, and apparently they may have potentially already dipped into the HSF. Just, you know, it's not where it was earlier, not too long ago in the year. Now, with that said, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open the phone lines so we can hear you, the viewers. Stay tuned. This is talking about the WSN, the Connect Capital. We'll be right back after this.
have a question of the day?
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we cannot a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
I'm back here to talk about the WSND Continental Capital Show. Michael Small alongside Keaton Shaw, closing out the week in style. I don't feel that stylish this morning, folks. But with that said, we'll open up the phone lines. Now is the time where we could hear from you, the viewer. You could call in and have your say on this, well, on those topics that we spoke about this morning, or any other topics that we may not have touched upon. There were some other things that we could have, but we didn't have enough time. Certain policies that are coming down the pipe, I would argue, are quite late. As well as other stories. Of course, at the end of the day, it's election silly season, so it's all going to essentially come back down to that. And let's not forget, there's going to be a P&M General Council, whatever that means, on Saturday, and they're going to tell us something, hopefully. We don't know. They're being very vague and mysterious, you know? But with that said, we open the phone lines. While we wait on callers, this is the last chance to have your say. Mr. Shah, there was a comment that you made during the break that you could expand upon.
It's not a comment that I made, actually. Someone has pointed it out to us that Sean Michael Small and Keaton Shaw are members of the public as well, because the question is, who is the public? Only me. And I think that they are referring to where I said that we as citizens have a role to play as well.
Yeah.
And I just like to say the comment is it's a fair comment. Me personally, I am not going to take blame for the end result of what we are currently seeing, but I will take responsibility in doing my part to ensure that there is hopefully a bit of difference going forward.
Now,
for example, that responsibility I will use this platform to always try and tell people, listen, you got to do what is right, and you've got to always abide by the laws. Take some responsibility with that.
We have two callers on the line. First, Maraval. Good morning, caller, you're on air.
Hello, good morning.
Morning, morning.
Talking about Stuart Young this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Stuart Young apologized to everybody that did not come up. He said the thing to apologize to the former Prime Minister. You call her name on the name, right? So you apologize to the woman, not to the house, not to the... You should apologize to that you make the comment to, right? You when somebody call out your money.
Caller, you're breaking up.
I've got the gist of
That's disrespectful.
Yes, caller. Sorry, you're breaking up, but I think we got the gist of it, and I can't say I disagree with you. Yes, he should have mentioned them by name. I believe the deputy speaker or the speaker mentioned the opposition leader by name, but not Stuart Young. And you're right. What did he apologize for? Not for the actual act of what he did. He apologized for some of the consequences around it.
Which is why I don't think there is genuine remorse.
With that said, we have St. James on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on air. Caller, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Sean and Ethan.
Good morning, caller.
I'm trying to tie in, what Ethan had mentioned a little while ago, where these ministers who hold in that office cannot relate to the general public in terms of, cost of living and so on. I'm trying to tie in this people living on 2015 wages, and the Salary Review Commission recommended this high increase in things. What really going on? I'm trying to tie these things, and it don't make sense to me. What is really going on?
Doesn't make sense to me either, caller.
Thank you, caller. The problem is you have a lot of long-term issues, and short-term solutions ain't going to fix them. A lot of long-term unhealthy practices that compound each other over time, and we get where we are at now. So it's very complex. We have Tunapun on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on air. Caller, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Morning, morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Morning, Anand Keaton.
Good morning, caller.
Yes. Well, all I have to say this morning, that God walks in mysterious way, and He is the only that will make what is wrong and what is right in due course. Now, I will like the people in this country. All of us must be honest.
Yes, go ahead.
Right. And I will to know why the first thing people do today in the world, who is a mother, a grandmother, a wife, whatever, the female aspect, we have lost respect for them. But we must understand that that same female has risked their lives to multiply in this world. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Yeah,
Thank you very much for the caller.
I think that's a modern phenomenon, and we have not done a good job of progressing properly. We've progressed, not always well. But we have San Fernando on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Well, Mr. Keaton.
Morning.
Now, two quick ones. One is, I think we should stop talking about Mr. Young on that case, because clearly you could see it's a setup. Partner, all good media article, right? Go back and check. Mr. Inbert was on his legs. And when he's on his legs, his mic will be open. Okay? Now, having said that, because I clearly hear him say, well, I give way now to the speaker who is now arriving. So clearly he was on his legs. So he was addressing Parliament. He stopped talking, and Mr. Young continued talking, damn well knowing that the man on mic. So either he do it purposely, So all they could stop talking about the 50 million, all they want to give the Prime Minister office to go and buy shrimp. Clearly. Or the same boat feels that he could shut him up. And then there's really conversation going in his direction now. Right? Because, I mean, if Mr. Young could go and Google what that word means and how is a church, in the context he used, wasn't no church. In Trinidad, we know what he means. Because when we say small pen, he know what we mean too. Right? So too wrong to make a right. At the end of the day, we have to stop talking nonsense with you. Because we have children looking on, and they go, well, if he could say it, we could do it too. You understand? And then I have lead to somebody getting ignorant in school, and then they go, bullying now. Right? We have this thing going on too over and over. Another thing, one quick one.
Quickly.
When the former Prime Minister took Mr. Rowley to South Africa, I think it was Nelson Mandela something like that.
Yeah, his funeral.
Right. Yeah. Stupendous. Now, you know what he come back and say? When we were in South Africa, we slept together like husband and wife. Man, if I was she husband, I'd have licked him down.
All right, Paula, thanks very much. Have a good day.
Well, I'm not too sure if she said slept together.
Listen, at the end of the day, it's everyone. We are open to hearing your opinions. Please be very careful in what you approach.
He did make the husband and wife reference, but I don't think he said slept together.
I do not. I also, if I was the husband or wife or whatever, I do not subscribe to that, and we don't encourage that, and that has no standing on talking point. Please, please be very careful in what you are saying.
Was Stuart Young set up, or did he say those things deliberately? I am not necessarily going to say I disagree with either of those potential possibilities. Your guess is as good as mine, and I'll leave that there. I'll save the speculation for later on. We have another caller from San Fernando waiting. Good morning, caller, you on here.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Keaton.
Morning.
You know, I three things I want to talk about this point. This issue that I find that is wasting out of the public's time, this issue of Mr. Young and this hot mic. This is not the first hot mic situation. And let me say, and which is, I just overlook this. The speaker and the deputy speaker, if you into the house and take it and sat down there and taking a session, what happened there is a normal, and it is allowed by the speaker. The speaker has given both sides too much. Sometimes when you this discourse going on, but you can't hear it because the mic is off.
Yeah.
The speaker gives them a lot of latitude to cause this back and forth stupidity to be going. So don't only blame the members.
Yeah.
A lot of this blame has to go to the speaker.
You're absolutely correct. I think this was also forced to deal with this situation as well. But what you were saying, Paula?
So that is one. The second thing, Sean, you had commented, I think it was yesterday, when Junior Benjamin, the DCP, talked about the 4 units that will only be allowed to have the tactical uniform.
That's this morning, yeah.
Yeah, that is done, as far as I'm concerned, that they understand that I don't buy it for a second that this fake police situation that if they want to put out there, you know. The reason to have to, it is fake police and fake uniform. You can back the tactic from most of the officers. They understand that they have a serious problem. This is a mitigating factor. They're trying to pull back to see how best they could, because they understand what's going on in the police service. They understand it. As I said a couple of days ago, and it's the reason why they put all the ACPs now in charge of the divisions, to put a next layer of administration inside it to try and deal with the situation. The last thing I have to comment on is the 50 million that the Tobago got.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the oil spill. And people had Mr. Imbert said, they have a problem with how he said it. And you had a problem with how he said it too, Sean. I listened to your discourse. Now, let me say this. When the THA when that oil spill situation took place, they actually put together an estimate and sent to the Parliament 30 minutes of it was I think it's 160 something billion dollars, right?
Yeah.
$1 million. And inside of that, I don't know if you saw the estimate to the gentleman who's the advisor to the minister, the THA, I forget his name, from Tobago. He's on the program a couple of times.
Anselm Richards.
Well, Mr. Richards, a lot of they had nothing to do with the oil spill. A lot of stuff inside had nothing to do with the oil spill. And when that comment, and I only know Mr. Embut is not. I am not a fan of Mr. Embut. But when Mr. Embut made the comment, that stems from when the Ministry of Finance puts money in the hands of the T. Even though they said they give them money they say this is for X and Y in a particular case, not anything in law to spend that money on what the minister has given them the money for. Hence, the Fisher Folk Association to be getting on the way they understand that money that they get is part of that 50 million in the estimates. Okay. And they have refused, and that's the problem with the THA, this present THA.
Well, thanks.
We have another caller waiting, and the show has to close. But thank you for that. Quick, Ethan.
I just want to say, please, we want to give everybody a chance, so please make your points as concisely as possible. We want to hear your thoughts and opinions, but you got to, be considerate to others as well.
Last caller for the morning, El Socorro. Good morning, caller. You're on here.
Yeah, morning, Chief. Morning to you, gentlemen.
Morning.
Two things on the burner, just quickly, just to follow up on the caller just now. Where are these bandits getting these uniforms, tactical uniforms from the police force? Are they going down to their local seamstress to sew up these tactical uniforms? Or are these uniforms, I just asked the question, gentlemen, are these uniforms being rented by corrupt police officers? That's one. Mm-hmm. And secondly, this shootout at Southeast Port of Spain along Nelson Street. Students and teachers scampering, 800 of them. This is not the first time that gunplays are taking place around schools. And 3 people were injured. Did the police interview these people and find out who was shooting at them? Did they go out and flush out the criminals who were behind this criminal act around schools? Gentlemen, we continue to be under the siege of criminals in this country. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Caller, to answer your first point, we have official reports that there have been both authentic and counterfeit uniforms confiscated by the police, which implies that some of the uniforms were sourced by official sources, whether they're rented, stolen, what have you, or given, and some were manufactured. That I believe would be the counterfeit ones. So there's that. And to Mr. San Fernando, I think both things could potentially be true, but it comes back down to this. The THA could have tried to overreach. Meanwhile, the minister's messaging and how he did his messaging could have been more effective. Then in an election year, one would hope they were a bit more careful with how they come across, especially if they have any, or they want to have any hope for Tobago. Some people think that they do with Tobago West. I am not too sure. All things considered, the race is too tight for you to have sloppy communications, and I feel ultimately what the Minister of Finance did, saying statements on that, was sloppy. That was my overall point yesterday. The political communication is very sloppy all of a sudden from PNM.
I just like to say when it comes to the TTPS, I think we were speaking about the police service earlier and all that is happening there as well. I wanted to make this comment earlier. I think I'll hold back on it from going into detail. Sean, you read where the commissions of police have gotten Toyota Land Cruisers limited special editions. You read about that story?
No,
right?
No.
I really wanted to speak about it this morning. Somebody had a comment earlier about the TTPS, and it slips my mind now. We'll talk about that next week. It's cost over $5 million each year, but you should go and read that article. Sorry, 500,000 each. That's after tax exemption.
Yeah.
To the to this last thing, I'm curious to know, right? Why is it that instead of giving these officers pinned badges with their badge number or their identification number, should we start stitching the numbers into the uniforms? Would that cost a lot more? Would that? It's just something to consider as part of a solution if we want to get clarity over this. Instead of giving them pins to put on their uniform, unless they get one uniform to keep that or two uniforms, start stitching the numbers into their uniforms. It's just a thought that has come to mind. We could debate about it next week, but I think you should consider that, and then you'll really see what's taking place.
Or things along those lines. And if you have a police officer with a fake number, or no number at all, those will still be potential clues to crack the case. I like the line of thinking. I don't know what would be the best practical way to do it, but I like the line of thinking. With that said, thanks to all the callers for calling in, and of course to my co-host, host of AM Prime, Mr. Keaton Shaw.
John Michael Small, thank you very much. I hope that you have a good day today, all things considered.
I really hope so too.
All right. Keep well, keep strong, and we'll see you again very soon.
Folks, remember your allegiance to the Republic, and next week, talking about returns. Bye-bye.
WESN.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity